For some of you, you will have heard this word before or a variation of it, but it has changed, it has morphed, it has metamorphosed, it has transformed. And I would like, if you would, because like I said, I don't want to be before you long. I will endeavor to do what it is that God has instructed me to do. And if you would turn with me to John, the 20th chapter. Starting at the 11th verse, and it reads as follows. But Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping, and as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre. And seeing two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they say unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She saith unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him. And when she had thus said, she turned herself back and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was Jesus. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if thou have borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. Jesus saith unto her, Mary. She turned herself and saith unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. And for emphasis, the 15th and 16th verses again. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if thou hast borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. Jesus saith unto her, Mary. She turned herself and saith unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. And for a topic, I would like to use the crises of identification. The dictionary defines crises as a turning point for better or for worse in an acute disease or fate or fever. It also says that it is an unstable or crucial time or state of affairs in which a decisive change is impending, especially one with the distinct possibility of a highly unfavorable outcome. Come on. The word identification is something that shows who a person is, a document, a card that has your name and other information about you, and often includes a photograph.
All right, come on.
For those of you that go to the DMV, just a brief moment of levity is that some of those pictures you would want to take over and over and over again.
All right.
See, the truth about identification is that what it does is that it establishes your identity. It says to the world who you are.
Come on.
It says very simply that on this day, at such and such a time, if it's your birth certificate, that an individual was born that was given this name. It establishes you when you go to the Social Security office. It helps you to obtain a driver's license. It is that thing that says as we grow older, this is who the world says that I am. And it plays itself out, either the world being right or God being right.
Come on.
Right, work it out.
See, when we look at this thing called identifications and the crises that currently exist in the world, we could take some hints from some of the episodes that we find in the Bible. Herod was king when Jesus was born, and when the wise men came and visited, he was concerned because they said, "Where is this new king?" And Herod, having been appointed by the Romans, was wondering if he was in fact getting ready to be supplanted and was concerned. He suffered from a crisis of identification.
Right. Come on.
Mary, the mother of Jesus, when she was approached by the angel Gabriel, said, "Who am I that God would visit me this way?" At 12 to 14 years old, based on Jewish custom, she had not yet known the man, and she was wondering what in the world was going to happen to her as far as her society was concerned, as far as her espoused husband was concerned, and not only that though, but as far as she was concerned. She suffered from a brief moment of crises. But she took that moment, less than 3 months later, and visited her cousin Elizabeth, and said when she was greeted, "My soul doth magnify the Lord." She understood then that the crises had passed, and now she was ready to assume her identity.
Preaching good. Preaching good.
The widow of Nain, whose son had died. She was already a widow, and in that society, what it said was that if she were a widow, then her sons were supposed to take care of her. And her only son was now dead. She was concerned as to what her livelihood was going to be in this particular civilization. But what ended up happening was that he died. She suffered at that moment a crisis of identification because she knew not where her next meal was coming from. She did not know how she was going to live. She changed completely who she was and how she was going to operate. She suffered from a very drastic crisis of identification. But then along came Jesus and touched that buyer and raised that boy. And it was that reality that changed her identification. It was no longer a crisis, but a moment that should have been identified as a moment of praise and worship. There were the apostles. When Jesus confronted them and said very simply, "Who do men say that I am?" And they said, "Some say that thou art a prophet. Some say that thou art that great one." And Jesus turned to them and said, "Well, who is it that you say that I am?" And Peter said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." But yet, not more than 10 to 15 minutes later, if I put it in the scripture and figure it out, Peter yet then said something that caused Jesus to rebuke him. He suffered from a crisis of identification. We getting to the meat now. There were 10 blind men who were healed, and only one of them turned and came back. The other 9 suffered from a crisis of identification because Jesus told them that they were healed and sent them on their way, but the healing did not take place until they walked away from Jesus. Not recognizing that they had been healed, the 9 of them continued to walk as if nothing had happened, suffering from a crisis of identification. But the one turning back, giving thanks to God, understood and identified that he was different than he was when he left. major types of identification. The first one is condition identification. See, if I was going to take it and paint it in broad strokes, let me start with the broadest strokes and then work my way back. See, this world that we live in, this United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, built and established on religious principles that utilized the New England primer, which consisted of verses from the Bible as its first foundational book, that was totally undergirded by the most phenomenal publication of all time, the King James Bible, has lost its perspective, its will, and its purpose, and is suffering from a crisis of identification that is rooted and grounded in spiritual dementia. A dementia that finds itself grounded in the outcry of less than 2.3% of the people that oppose clearly what is written in the Old and New Testament concerning the constitution and foundation of any great nation, the family.
That's right. That's preaching now. Come on.
The sanctity of marriage and the procreation of the species hangs in the balance when the idea of family values within the structure sanctified by the Creator has been ignored. Even though the same Creator has endowed them with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they have chosen to call what can easily be classified as a civil right by a term that was instituted by God and Jesus and has now been perverted by Satan. So that now marriage comes in two flavors, regular and gay. One real and the other a bona fide perversion of not only the biblical reality, but also the usurping of the definition of the word gay to the point that we are experiencing a crisis of identification. This is not a new reality. Down through the years, the Bible has represented in our Bible, there have been many who have suffered a crisis of identification. Recently, Time magazine had as its cover a question that asked, is God dead? We have allowed non-Christians to place its identification on God's creation to the detriment of us all. Not only that though, for those of you who went to go see the movie Exodus, Christian Bale, who played Moses, described Moses as a schizophrenic when he was interviewed, suffering from a crisis of identification. See, the thing is that there are things that we see that we choose to ignore because of the fact that they do not affect us. We have identified them, but we ignore them for the sake of ourselves. See, there are things that we see and things that we hear that tell us that people are still fundamentally flawed. There are things that are still happening and that are being said, that are being done, that keep us from getting along with each other. The same God that made you made me. Last night, on my way back home from the basketball game, I was with my children. And there were two men of a different persuasion standing behind us. One of them with a sweatshirt that said Milwaukee Fire Department. And he said, and I quote, I am so glad that I am not black or any other race, because then I could kill with impunity. This is not Ferguson. This is Milwaukee. Still suffering from a crisis of identification. The second type of identification is situation or station identification. A lot of us in here grew up watching TV when you had to go get up and turn the knob. A lot of us in here, when the knob broke, had to go get the pliers to change the channel. A lot of us in here remember the clothes hanger or the antenna. And a lot of us also remember that TV went off at a certain time. Not only that though, but then they showed you the test pattern, sang the national anthem, and then everything turned to snow. We did not have an issue because people on TV weren't trying to tell us who to be. We weren't suffering from a crisis of identification. The TV station in itself, nowadays, when they get ready to identify themselves, they have their logo down in the corner. In the old days, what ended up happening is that the man would come on TV and say, "We are taking a short pause for station identification." So we had to know at that particular point, if we were unsure what was on TV, they told us what network we were watching, what channel it was on, and so therefore we were able to identify whether or not we were in the right place at the right time. All right? See, here's the rest of this thing though. It is possible in situation or station identification to be in the wrong place at the right time, the right place at the wrong time, and the wrong place at the wrong time, as well as the right place at the right time. See, when we are in the right place, we understand who it is that God is and what it is that He has done for us. Otherwise, when we are in the wrong place, we take credit for stuff that the Creator has done. See, when we thought about these things, there were also commercial breaks where we understood that with this pause for station identification came the advertisement that said, well, if you want this, this is what happens. Instead of TV like it is now, where sex and drugs and everything else is advertised all through the show.
Come on.
Talk about it, preacher.
To give you a biblical example, because here's the deal. I don't want y'all to think that I'm just giving the word. But John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11, Jesus, what ends up happening is that the woman is caught in the very act of adultery. Jewish law was ignored because it takes two to tango, but you had only one of the partners. The Pharisees and those that were in charge brought her to Jesus in order to find out what Jesus was going to do. Jesus stooped down and started writing, and I'm paraphrasing y'all, started writing in the sand. Now, I could believe that he might have been writing words like lust. He could have been writing words like backbiting. He also could have been writing those words and attaching people's names to them while he was writing in the dirt. So what ends up happening with this is that Jesus says, I need you to check your situation. I need you to come to that place where you look at you, because see, your station or situation because they understood
Yeah.
that their situation was no different than the situation that that woman was in. Sin is not only sin, but watch this. Chasing after anything other than the living God is adultery.
That's right.
And lastly,
I agree with you.
personal identification. We talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but I want to twist it just a little bit.
Okay.
See, because nowadays we have this drink called haterade.
All right.
And sometimes we mistakenly believe that other people are drinking out of a glass that is full and ours is empty.
That's true. That's right.
We also believe that sometimes that their glass is full and ours is empty. But see, the truth about haterade is that it only comes into play when you esteem yourself more than you esteem others. And when you overestimate who you are and expect other folks to do the same. See, my personal identification says that on September 26, 1957 at 9:26 p.m., a male child was born to Robert and Neversia Andrews.
All right. All right.
That's my personal information. I know that. God knows what was supposed to happen with me. God made it happen with me in spite of me. Personal identification says that I understand that sometimes God has to step in and intervene in my life in order to get my attention because of the fact that He knows, even if I don't believe it, that I'm hard-headed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's true.
All right.
See, the true identification of self is when you have a real understanding of who you are. Whether you be a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, a aunt, a uncle, a teacher, a computer programmer, a preacher, a pastor, whatever it is that you happen to be. When you understand how God is using you and understand this, you have no idea how much God wants to use you, because half of the time you end up getting in the way of what it is that God wants you to do. If we were going to be truthful about the identification of ourselves, we are suffering from a crisis of identification.
All right. All right. Good word. Good word.
See, this misidentification process, and now I'm getting to the text.
All right.
This misidentification of Jesus, we too sometimes do it.
Okay.
Because sometimes we forget that He is Lord and Savior. We call Him doctor. We call Him lawyer. We call Him friend. We call Him a lot of things. But most of the time, to be honest about it, if we were left to our own devices, we would not call Him. The misidentification of Jesus is not always wrong. Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches.
Okay.
But we forget and skip over the part that says that without me you can do nothing. But in our story, Jesus as the gardener is not a case of mistaken identity.
Okay. All right.
See, because if I was going to be honest about it, and I'm getting ready to close, Jesus as the gardener understands that even though it's spring in my life, that there's going to be some leaves from my past that continue to fall, and He will rake them up. Not only that though, but when He's looking at me and I look like this wonderfully well-kept, manicured property, there are some places where the lawn needs edging. Not only that though, but because sometimes I think more of myself than I ought to, there's some hedges that need to be trimmed. See, not only that though, but because I got some places in my life that are unfruitful, there's some pruning that has to happen. Okay, not only that though, but see, there's some other things that go on because I got some bare spots in some places. And what needs to happen is that the lawn needs to be sodded. But more importantly, what ends up happening with the God that I serve is that he understands two things. The first one is that he has the ability to rake this all up and to compost the waste.
That's good word. He does. That's good word. He does.
And lastly, when I ain't doing everything that I'm supposed to do. My biblical reference for this is Luke chapter 13, verses 6 through 9. Is that very simply, when I am unproductive, he will take the compost of my past and use it to fertilize my future. See, when I understand that Jesus is not only my Lord, my King, my Savior, wonderful Counselor, mighty God, Prince of Peace, I also understand that he's the vine, he's the shepherd. I also understand that not only that though, but just like Mary, I hear his voice, I harden not my heart, and then I understand more than anything else that when he called my name, I recognized him for who he was. I no longer suffered from a crisis of identification. I got to that place because of the fact that I understood and heard a voice, recognized it for who he is. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. All things are passed away. Behold, all things are made new. There's some new growth that's going on in me today. I might be 57, but I might as well still be 7. Because the truth of it is that God is working some things out in me that I still don't understand where they are. There's some stuff that's on the inside of me that only the gardener can fix. The gardener knows the difference between Kentucky bluegrass. The gardener knows the difference between